Today we're going to be describing, discussing, and practicing Kumbaka. And Kumbaka is a pranayama technique of retaining your breath. As you may know, the word Kumbaka roughly means a clay pot. And the indication of that is that a clay pot can be full or it can be empty. Just like your breath can be full or your breath can be empty. And you're exploring the two ranges of that and how that feels in the energetic body, the subtle body, and how do you add that into your breathing practice, maybe your meditation practice, and maybe even a moving physical body practice. We're going to start today's lesson as we do with the little guided meditation. And we'll do just a very gentle Kumbaka practice so that you can really intuitively feel the difference between holding your breath full and holding your breath empty. And there will be a difference. And I'd like you to pay attention to that difference in your body and in your energy and in your whole field. So bring yourself into your natural seat. 2 sitting bones left and right, tailbone in the back, pubic bone in the front, spine nice and tall, as always. And gently close your eyes. With your eyes closed, turn your gaze down into your heart, into your lungs, into your diaphragm, if you have built some familiarity with the movement of the bandhas, then maybe you can even feel a gentle tapping into Uddiyana Bandha as well as Mula Bandha. So your breathing diaphragm and your pelvic floor. Coming into a rhythm with your breath. As you inhale, you can feel that movement downward. And the exhalation softening upward. Remembering that the practice of the physical locks of the bandhas are there to catch any impurities in the subtle body, send it into the furnace of the deep belly. Fan that deep furnace with the breath and the heart, oxygenate, and then burn it out. Purify, cleanse. Kumbaka takes this cleansing process and just gives it a little bit more space to unfold, gives it a little bit more purpose. We've done natural breathing before. Let's start with that here. So bring your hands onto the side of your ribs with your fingers either pointing forward or down or back, but really whatever's comfortable for you. And put a little press in on your ribs so that you can feel on your inhalation a drawing back out. So quite wide. Try to hold a little bit of that space side to side, left to right as you exhale, feeling for that Uddiyana Bandha now, the low belly moving a little J action back and up toward the heart. Do that 2 more times. Inhale through your nose. Get wide, stay wide. Exhale through your nose. Feel the diaphragm drawing upward toward the heart. 1 more time like that. Inhale wide. You're holding a little bit of artificial side-to-side space as you exhale, drawing that low belly back and up. And then you can release your hands and come into either a natural breathing practice for a few rounds or perhaps adding the sound of that breath so that this is more of an ujjayi practice. And just to state that these two breathing techniques are almost exactly the same, but Ujjayi is differentiated because you're listening to the rhythm of the sound. Down at the base of the throat, gently constricting those throat muscles to lengthen the breath. Little prayer on the breath. Slight H quality on the inhalation, slight S quality on the exhalation. Listening to Ham Sa. I am that. The prayer that is whispered in the breath. Take 2 more breaths like that, please. Empty your breath all the way out, feeling that light lift of the diaphragm, that light lift of pressure out of the belly. And then draw your breath all the way in. And lightly hold the breath at the top. Notice if you grip when you're full. Soften your shoulders. And then exhale your breath out. Do that one more time. Inhale the breath all the way in. Pause, hold. Maybe even feel the throat closing lightly. And then relax, exhale it out through the nose. Inhale in. Creating space, fanning that flame. Hold the breath, the chin just a little lower. Don't wait too long. Exhale it out. Take a normal breath in and a normal breath out. And then we'll do the holding at the bottom of the exhalation. So, Ujjayi, or natural breath, draws in. Through the nose, exhale. Pause at the bottom of your exhalation and hold. Just a little beat. Relax, inhale. Exhale. Pause, hold. One more. Release. Inhale. Exhale. Pause. Hold. Release. Inhale. Open your mouth, let it out. And gently open your eyes. Bringing yourself into your body, feeling how oxygenated you are, how those impurities that the bandhas starts to heat up. Maybe you built a little bit of warmth, a little bit of heat in that practice, and you can feel that. When we do our Kumbaka practice, we are definitely engaging the bandhas. Especially on the exhalation, you want to practice Uddiyana Bandha and therefore also Mula Bandha when you're empty of breath. In fact, that pause at the base of the exhalation gives us just enough spaciousness internally to really feel that lift, that engagement, that kind of directing of energy up into the belly. And on that inhalation, when you're inhaling and holding it up, and then you lock into a Jalandhara Bandha, it's like a lid closes. You can actually feel this, it's like a shutting of the lid. And you might actually feel that that's a very powerful cycle into your body. You might actually feel that extremely intensely. That's not unusual. But what I will say in addition to that is it's also not unusual to feel one of these holds, one of these locks, as more intense than another. Okay, so let's talk about what those two are. Antara Kumbaka is the hold when you're full. There's a couple of words for holding empty. Bahia Kumbaka is what Iyengar uses, but you'll also hear the word rechaka. Sometimes that means exhalation, sometimes that means holding it empty. But holding it empty, what I usually call it, is Bahia Kumbaka. The two have very specific flavors to them. And those two very specific flavors are tied in energetically to the whole body and the whole subtle body. One thing that you want to pay attention to and notice in your body is if you have a physical response of discomfort, if you're in one of those. Antara Kumbaka, let's talk about that one first. And let's go into a slightly more developed practice of Antara Kumbaka, using the lock, using that Jalandhara Bandha. And then we can address Bahia Kumbaka and those lower locks. And then we can put the two together and explore that. But my little disclaimer before we go into this is if something doesn't feel right to you, let's say I'm leading us through a practice and your body says, oh, this is kicking something up for me, please pay attention to that. Pranayama is revelatory. It teaches us, it shows us what's happening in our internal landscape. And unlike the physical yoga postures where we're allowed to push the envelope and play that delightful edge, which is why I love to call my class Playing Your Edge. You get to play the edge of your physical body a little bit. In pranayama, you really don't want to play that edge. You want to be gentle with yourself. You want it to unfold peacefully, where you're not pushing and then taking yourself into a place of internal discomfort, agitation, or something in there feels challenged or perhaps even triggering, because it can be triggering, especially these two kumbakas. Antara Kumbaka tends to be slightly less triggering than Bahia Kumbaka. Why is that? You start, when you're starting your Kumbaka practice, with Antara Kumbaka, holding full. When we hold our breath full, it's an indication that we are collecting life force within us and we are comfortable holding that life force. Who is this particularly good for? Who is this particularly not good for? We have to think about these things. Holding your breath full is really good if you're feeling sluggish, depressive, sad, heavy, if something feels stagnant in your world or in your emotional body or in your physical body. Especially good for minor kind of ennui or depression. Because you're inhaling, you're holding your breath, and then you're indicating to your body, let's circulate that life force into the limbs. Let's have this cleansing process. You're directing your energy downward, back into the heart, and then through the subtle body, through the prana, diffusing it, Viyana, Sammana, kind of you're getting that periphery and then that center. You're getting these deep wheels of energy, reinvigorating the body. Unsurprisingly, if you tend to be really anxious all the time and you're already living kind of up here and you're really stressed out and you tend to hold your breath up in your chest, then doing an Antara Kumbaka practice might be extremely disturbing for your mind. It represents the fullness of life, but if we take that fullness of life and we tip it over into an unmanaged place, that becomes anxiety, agitation, nervousness. So we don't want to push that in somebody who already has those patterns of anxiety. If you already live up, If you're already, the term in Ayurveda would be if you're already very pitta, you may not want to keep flaming that fire upward. Or out of the gunas is the system that I usually like to reference this in. If you tend to be extremely rajasic, we're going to talk about the gunas in great deal another time. So if that term doesn't make sense to you, then just wait and we'll fill that in another time. But essentially, those are qualities that pick us up out of the heaviness of the earth. The heaviness of the earth would be tamasic. So most people, when they kind of fall out of serenity, they tend to fall in these two directions. They either get heavy, depressive, sad, closed in, or they get up, ever so slightly. We could even say, if you take it too far, slightly manic, right? So Antara Kumbaka is really designed to take us up out of earthiness and into the fullness of our expression. Similarly, Bahia Kumbaka, when we're holding empty, is the same. If you tend to be heavy or sad or tamasic, if you're in one of those states that we've already mentioned, then holding empty is actually sometimes described as the death principle. If you have a lot of fear of death and it's uninvestigated and it's unexplored, and you don't have a whole lot of compassion and kindness around that pattern within you, then doing a prolonged Bahia Kumbaka can be extremely energetically taxing, if not damaging, right? Bahia Kumbaka represents in the body emptiness and then constricting that emptiness. The death principle in that one is a straight analogy. Life principle, hold full. Death principle, hold empty. And then you're cycling between the two. The breath cycle is the cycle of the 4 states of consciousness. And that emptiness at the bottom, met by the fullness at the top, takes us through the entire wheel. The breath becomes a microcosm, in other words, of the sound Om. The sound Om is the full circle of the 4 states. You have awake consciousness, you have Turiya, emptiness, that which holds everything, spaciousness, and you have sleep, deep sleep, and dream. So all of these different states of mind, all of these different states of consciousness, the breath is just a small microcosm of that turning. Listening to how that translates in your body gives you so much information. It can really help us to understand where our material is. This feels good, this doesn't feel good. Okay, now I have a place to start from. Now I can ask, what am I holding on to that's not working for me? Now I can ask, where are my traumas? Are my traumas in the lower, that heavier place? Or are they in a place where I've cut off heaviness and now I'm somebody that tries to, my voice is always just a little bit higher, I'm a little bit up, I'm just always up, everything is always up. We really start to see our internal coping mechanisms through practices like this. Kumbaka practice is an extremely intense practice. Are we ready to do it? Are we ready to investigate with kindness, with ahimsa, with honesty, with satya, right? Without stealing from yourself, without stealing from your process. So all of these principles of the yamas coming into play with this from a place of spacious curiosity. I'm going to give us plenty of space. I'll cue what we're doing, and then you'll decide the ratio of your own breath. We'll do 3 techniques, as I mentioned before: holding full Antara Kumbaka, then we'll do a holding empty Bahia Kumbaka, and then we'll tie it all together doing both, Sama Vritti Pranayam. If you feel more comfortable exploring this lying on your back, I think it's actually a better way to explore the breath work. You don't need to do this seated unless it's better for you to do this seated and you feel that aliveness in your spine, you feel the integrity of your seat, and you have more connection to your bandhas seated. Turn your attention inward, close your eyes. Don't manipulate anything. Just feel the natural rhythm of your body, and more than that, feel the natural rhythm of your inner state. Where you are today. More up, more down, somewhere in between. Maybe you're so agitated you're both up and down. That's okay. Notice what you notice. The whole practice here isn't to judge yourself, it's just to notice what you notice with available curiosity. Trust what's shown. And we'll start to come into our gentle, deep inhale, exhale. Again, it can be natural breathing through the nose or adding the sound to the natural breathing through your Ujjayi breath. Coming into that prayer, Hamsa. I'm not going to count your breath for you, at least for the first 2 practices, but I'd like you to do that for yourself. Maybe it's natural for you to breathe in to 3 seconds. Maybe you have the capacity to breathe into 5, 7, or 10. More or less. The next time you exhale your breath all the way out, squeeze it. Inhale all the way in, long breath. Hold your breath. Soft shoulders. Circulating the heart. Relax first, and then exhale. 4 more times with Jalandhara Bandha. Inhale. Hold your breath full, but this time drop your chin to your chest. Soft shoulders. Release first before you exhale. If you need a gap breath, take that. Just a gentle up-down rhythm. And then do this 3 more times on your own, taking as long as you need in this practice of investigating Antara Kumbaka, holding with Jalandhara Bandha. Please release Jalandhara Bandha before you get that urge to exhale. So pace it. Give yourself that extra second or 2. You may notice with the last two that you can engage Mula Bandha and Jalandhara Bandha, sealing the jar from the top and bottom. For some of us, it happens naturally. Try to do one more. If it was successful for you to engage Mula Bandha, actually pull the pelvic floor up when your breath is held. Open your eyes. When you're done, take your time. If you want to give yourself a moment to think about how that felt in your body or make observations, maybe you want to write it down. You can do a little bit of journaling or self-noting what that was like for you. For example, I notice that when I really practice after a few rounds and I start to build Mula Bandha into the Jalandhara Bandha, especially by that last one, for me, I can feel that my breath full, it seems to me that I can hold it for a very long time. And I can really feel my pelvic floor going higher and higher. I can feel my throat constrict. And there's a certain place in there where I can actually start to sense, as a somatic experience, the energy cycling through. We're never going to engage Uddiyana Bandha on inhalation because the diaphragm has been engaged downward. You can only go into an Uddiyana Bandha practice when the diaphragm is released, when it's pulling upward, which is exhalation. When we are holding our breath full in Antara Kumbaka, the only two bandhas you can really work are at the top at the throat and at the bottom at the pelvic floor. With regards to the breath, you do want to have some awareness of your pelvic floor and your throat and your breathing diaphragm, because your diaphragms along your center line, along with that all-important bottom of the bottom, extremely important to know where those are in your inner health. Same with the throat lock. If it's very constricting in your Antara Kumbaka to close off the throat and really squeeze into that glottis, then you go slowly because you're still exercising it. Maybe there's energetic stuff at your throat. Maybe as a child you were never allowed to speak or express yourself. Maybe it was unsafe for you to express yourself. Maybe you've been in a long-term relationship where your voice is unsafe. And so constricting those muscles is your body has been telling you for a long time, this is unsafe. That's why the investigation is so important. That's why the yamas and niyamas are so important, so that you're moving slowly with yourself to explore these things, because you almost certainly are investigating deep wells of how you hold things in your body, how you hold trauma, how you hold the energy of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and then how you start to slowly, with compassion, with honesty, challenge those barriers gently. That's why in pranayama you never push. You don't push. You're just gentle. In asana, it's bones, it's muscles. You want that extra little bit of stress. Let's do a Bahia Kumbaka practice now, because this is the one that really brings that stuff up. Let's try. If you want to just watch this one, if you already know it kicks something up for you, then you don't need to do it. You could just listen. If you're available, bring your spine back upright. Notice your internal rhythm. It's probably already changed quite a lot. Start to slip into your natural breath, or maybe your ujjayi breath. Take a full inhalation. Exhale your breath completely. Find that empty place. Pause. Draw your low navel a little back and up. Pull up your pelvic floor. Relax. Inhale. We'll do about 5 more of these. Again, I'm not going to count for you or monitor. I would just like you to explore. Maybe just its emptiness. Maybe it's emptiness with Uddiyana Bandha and Mula Bandha. Remember, they engage together. You can do Mula Bandha without Uddiyana. You can't do Uddiyana without Mula. Maybe you're doing all 3. Closing Jalandhara Bandha, pulling the low belly back and up, and feeling that pelvic floor engage. Remember to give yourself enough time to relax before you inhale. One more. Any observations on this one? If you want to give yourself a moment to think about it, assimilate it, write it down, you can do that. For example, I notice in my body today, I actually have a lot going on in my world right now, just in terms of things to do. And I'm finding Bahia Kumbaka kind of medicinal, but challenging. It's hard for me right now. And especially when I add the bandhas of Uddiyana and Mula Bandha, it almost feels too challenging. So I tried that a couple of times, and I knew that's not going to be my practice right now. I need to be a little gentler on myself. And then when I took the bandhas out, especially that Uddiyana Mula, then I could just hold empty without engaging any of those locks, and it felt much more medicinal, much more stable and grounding for me. Adding the bandhas, not adding the bandhas, that changes the recipe. Adding how long the pause is, changing the ratios, that changes the recipe. And we're in a constant arc of learning. It will be different tomorrow, it'll be different the next day. The breathing technique that Kumbhaka builds us toward is Sama Vritti Pranayam. Eventually, you hold equally at the bottom, at the top, and it's like drawing a square. Inhale for a certain count, hold that exact same count. Let's say it's 4 seconds. 4 seconds in, hold 4 seconds. Exhale 4 seconds, hold empty 4 seconds. And that equanimity in the pattern can actually balance the entire system. Let's say you have all of that dysfunction in one big package. It's anxiety, agitation, and inertia, depression. Then you do this balancing breath where you are actually exercising the two halves of the brain, getting it across that hemisphere, that corpus callosum, and getting the entire system into balance. Neurologically, our exhalation, especially that deep, long exhalation, stimulates the vagus nerve, which helps to bring us back into a stress release, into the parasympathetic nervous system. And so when you do a well-balanced Kumbhaka practice, you can signal balance into the whole system. The sympathetic is there if you need it. The parasympathetic is there as your baseline. You just have an equal availability to both. It's also great for teaching in a yoga class. To come in, everybody's coming off the street or they've come from wherever they've come from. They're in their home, they've been doing their work, they've been in a different state of mind, and now they need to come into the focus. Sama Vritti Pranayam is a great way to center a large group of people that's not going to be too agitating, and it's not going to be traumatizing or re-traumatizing. It doesn't have that same depth of investigative practice. It's more just a sweet balancing practice. You can take it off the mat and you can take it into your home practice and really go in to finding that balance within yourself, maybe by taking a few Antara Kumbaka and then a few Bahia Kumbaka and then starting to balance those out. Maybe it gets woven in somehow, but standing alone, it's a great practice. Let's try it. Bring yourself back into your upright position, and this one I will count for you. These are the cues that you'll want to hear, pay attention to. Whenever you're teaching pranayama to a group of people, you always start by setting the seat. Bring yourself into an upright position where your spine feels tall. Root down into your sitting bones and lift up through the top of your head. Close your eyes. Bring your attention down and into your breath. And we're going to take our Sama Vritti Pranayama, or equal breathing practice, which I will count for you. I'm going to start with the count of 4 to inhale, hold, exhale, and hold. But if you know in your body that you need a longer count, you can shift over to that after a couple of rounds. But all together, let's start with this count of 4. Exhale your breath all the way empty. Begin to inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold empty. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, holding full, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding empty. At the base of this one, you may need to change the count. Inhale, I'll stay with 4. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Counting you off. Inhale. Last time. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Continue on your own, taking 3 more rounds. Feel for that place in your breath, in the 4 sides of your breath, so to speak. That's the most challenging for you. That sets the timing for the rest of the segments. Let's say holding empty is your most challenging segment, and you can only hold it for 4 or 5 or 6 counts, but the rest you can hold for longer. Stick with that. That count becomes the standard. 1 more round. Come back into a normal breathing and gently open your eyes. What we just did was we set the seat. We set the physical posture. That's just reporting where you are in space, right? What we next did was we reported what we were about to do, which is the title of the breath, Sama Vritti Pranayama, square breathing. So I said it in Sanskrit and in English. And then I said what it was. You don't need to go beyond that. You don't need to go into the energetics of it unless you want to, and you're setting that as a theme for your class. That's okay. But it's enough to just say what you're doing. And then you spend maybe the first round or 2 guiding your students into that. You count the breath for them. And then you allow them to do it on their own a few rounds. Allowing them to do it on their own a few rounds is kind of the invitation for them to change your model, your rhythm. So it allows them to come into their own rhythm. It's important to give them that autonomy of their practice. In a general class, like in a public class, pranayama is such a short, brief taste that you're probably not going to aggravate anybody, because what you're really doing in that short amount of time is bringing them into a somatic awareness of their breath. That's never going to be a bad thing. Bringing us into a deeper understanding of our body and space and our breathing and getting ourselves to breathe more will always be beneficial. This is for those prolonged pranayama practices. It really becomes part of your ritual. That's when you pay attention to these deeper avenues of unfolding and what's energetically being revealed. So long as you're approaching your pranayama practice through the lens of the yamas and niyamas, you have already built in the safety valve. You've already built in the sensitivity to say, this is working for me, this is not working for me, this I can explore a little deeper into, this I cannot. Typically, if you're being guided by somebody else, you're not going to be listening to that stuff. Typically, if you're guided by your own self and you give yourself the time, the space and the time to explore that internal landscape, that's when you start to understand these deeper patterns within yourself. And that's where you'll know immediately the territory that feels unsafe or dangerous, or even slightly out of alignment, out of tune. Okay. When you have a encounter that feels scary and you can really feel what that's like in your body and you have that awareness, what that does is it starts to create a wider well of intelligence where we realize how the body stores trauma in a much bigger way. That dog came at you and you had an intense physical reaction to it. Now imagine if you spent your entire childhood having intense physical reactions to something that was unsafe, which is why pranayama can be extremely taxing. And you want to proceed slowly and gently because the stuff that gets unearthed can be intense stuff for a lot of people. We tend to hold that type of trauma, even the trauma of an animal coming at you, right? We tend to hold that kind of trauma. And if we don't process it out, if we don't shake it out of the physical body and out of the nervous system, if we don't breathe it out, if we don't let the body process in the way that the body tells you to process, not through a technique necessarily, not through this way or that way that some expert is guiding you through, but in the way that your body knows how to, in the way that your body knows to stand there and shake, to stand there and breathe, to kind of like lean into yourself and you're moving it through your system. Maybe you dance it out. However is particular to you, the body is so intelligent. If we don't do that with all our little traumas, then it's kind of like a storage house. And then it goes into here and it goes into there. And unpeeling those layers takes a lot of time and requires a lot of sweetness with yourself. Maybe you've been holding stuff for a really long time. Maybe you haven't. Maybe, maybe the nervous system feels the extra shock of something stressful coming at you because you've done such a good job of cleaning out your system and now you're extra sensitized. Your felt intuition of the world is very sensitive. And so if something comes at it in a really harsh way, it's hard on the system. But whatever that relationship is that you have with your body and with the world, it's always changing. Stress is always being put into the system. Stress is always being managed by the system, where we are in constant interaction with the dance of life, with the play, in both senses of the word. Coming back in. Give yourself a moment to feel that balance. Honoring all of yourself. Bring your hands over your heart and bow your head. In a spirit of deepening your self-investigation from a curious, kind place. Listening to what those inner rhythms are always whispering. Take a full breath and let it out. Thank you. Namaste.